do you still think it's a good time for people to be looking at something like Bitcoin as an asset class, or is that sort of ship salvage?
Yeah, with the cryptocurrencies and altcoins, I think if this is going to be that more substantial pullback that we've been waiting for, it's gotten too hot too quick yet again, time to cool off. But it's hard to convince people, especially after 7 green months.
You mentioned real estate, stocks, etc. Where do you sort of think we sit now and what we should be paying attention to? Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tapping Into Crypto. Bit of a special guest, welcoming back Mr. Jason Pizzino. Mate, welcome. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks again, Pav. Good to be on again.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a while since we've had you on. I think last time we were in the recovering phases of the bear market, I guess you could say. So bit more of a greener pastures since last time we caught up. But yeah, I thought we'd just crack straight in. I mean, obviously there's a fair bit of people that may be returning to the markets, people that have been weathering the storm through the bear market. I think it'd be good just to maybe sort of touch on, from your perspective, what you've been seeing just in your community, just with your content as well. I wanted to kick off with a recent article that you did for Crypto News Australia, where you mentioned we're not bullish enough. I thought that'd be a good place to start. I mean, it kind of feeds into itself, really. But what can you sort of tell us about, what you're seeing on that front?
What I'm seeing on that front, we could take a step back. We kind of need to go back 12 to 18 months, and I'll try and make it as quick as possible. In those gloomy times of the bear market, it was all getting baked up for this period. And so, I mean, people can go on my YouTube and see for themselves that 18 months ago, between sort of June of 22 and January of 2023, that period was basically building for what we have now. And then we had another period, say, for Bitcoin in particular, between March of 23 and September of 23. So sort of like a 6-month period there before we got this massive explosive move. So I guess for many people that just came into the market in March of 2024, they're sort of seeing it's like, how did this happen? But this thing had been baking for over 12 months. We had a lot of flush outs, a lot of consolidation, higher price lows forming on bad news, seemingly worse news than the last, but you're getting higher prices. And so when you look at this from a technical perspective, that is suggesting that we're about to see something even bigger than what we were getting used to, which was a bear market and an accumulation period. Now, so that's the Bitcoin crypto side. For the bigger markets at hand, traditional markets, stock markets, real estate, the same thing was happening over there. So not to try and, I don't want to double up here, but the same thing was going on. The US stock markets were doing that. They were consolidating, getting high prices on worse news, banking crisis, all this sort of stuff. And then, of course, they've exploded. Real estate, we were told we were on the edge of a mortgage cliff, if you remember that, for Australia.
Yeah, that was,
of course, that didn't play out. I had people messaging me all through that period. It's like, you better watch out. The markets are going to come down. I've got friends who are valuers, and they're all getting sent off to different places in Australia to weather this storm that's coming. They were all completely on the wrong side of things because, I mean, that's just the stage that we're at. And that's why I talk about we're not all bullish enough when it comes to that. I think we're getting towards the end to be too bullish because we've already gone through such an explosive move. Real estate, stock markets, and Bitcoin and crypto. So for me, it's coming into the cautious side now.
Okay, so in terms of how you're seeing things without obviously having to pick too heavy of a side, do you still think it's a good time for people to be looking at something like Bitcoin as an asset class, or is that sort of ship salvage?
Yeah, I say it hesitantly because it all depends on your time frame. So, of course, I'm a trader investor, and I just look at risk reward and my risk appetite and how long I'm looking at things. People might generally at this stage come in saying, oh, it's all right, I'll hold it for 5 to 10 years, not really knowing what else they're going to do with it. But I would definitely, I would still be looking at it. Well, I still am looking at it, but I'd be looking to at least take something off the table in the next 12 to 18 months.
Well said, mate. Well said. I guess, sort of touch base on a couple of different asset classes and sort of sectors and how they've been performing with relative strength in the face of bad news. Is there sort of anything in the crypto space in terms of categories or themes or narratives that you've seen evolve or that you're keeping an eye on?
I think the standard stuff that most people are keeping an eye on, which is why it's doing the best. I don't think there's too many secrets now at this stage. And there probably weren't that many secrets 6-12 months ago either. It just was a matter of time. And those main couple of ones that I think a lot of people are across are meme coins, Solana ecosystem, AI, maybe mix it all together and you get something crazy in there. That'll be something mega. And you're seeing a couple more come through, like DPIN, real world assets, that sort of stuff. And so with real world assets, which is what your RWA, that might tie in very well with things like real estate, which is in its end stage of the cycle. We're seeing very high real estate prices throughout Australia, throughout the US. So maybe some sort of cryptos or NFTs that capitalize on that growth of real estate because two of them coming together, that could be another good area.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, the real world assets obviously has captured a fair bit of people's attention just with BlackRock and the likes of Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, also going out on sort of news publications and saying how this is the future. You know, we've got Bitcoin as a store of value for some time. We've had a lot of speculation around smart contracts and what they could offer. Do you sort of pin real world assets as like the next theme at all? Like, do you give that any merit?
I think real world assets does have its place. I think it's going to depend on how the developers are going to, I guess, attach this to the real world. Is it something nonsense like sort of different NFTs that we saw last cycle? You know, you bought an NFT, then you could be part of like a metaverse, which no one cares about anyway, which just ends up dying. Or is it like a real world asset where it's used in a smart contract, maybe an NFT to something to do with real estate and the title of that deed or something, you know? And is it necessary? So yeah, I think it's going to need to be researched a little heavier this time around.
Yeah. I think definitely the takeaway from what I'm seeing in my personal circles, everyone's a lot more skeptical now than they were last cycle, which is a bit of a fresh air. That's even with people that only entered maybe late in last cycle. They knew that they potentially bought it too late, but even then, it seems like people need a lot more convincing right now, which is interesting. It'd be good to get, I guess, a bit of a sentiment check from yourself and your community. Do you find people are more hesitant to come back this market cycle because, I guess, a variety of reasons? Like, do you think there's still a bit of a lingering hangover from the effects of the likes of SBF? Just the fact that the market's moved so much, they think a lot of the move's done. Do you find that as being a sentiment in your community?
Not necessarily. I think because of the move of how quick it's been this time for Bitcoin and reaching that new all-time high maybe 4 or 5 months earlier than the previous cycles, people are a little bit more, they're onto it. They want to get involved quicker now because of how fast it was. So I'm seeing that a little bit more this time around. And in terms of the sentiment where it currently sits, I think it's gotten too hot too quick yet again. So it's just that time to cool off. But it's hard to convince people, especially after 7 green months straight up, basically from September, and they're just they're not willing to just realize that we might be cooling off here. So when the price doesn't go any higher and they're not willing to realize that we might need a cool off, it's probably going to cool off longer than what we would typically do if it was sort of more of like a balance thing. So I hope that made sense.
No, it does. I think pretty much encapsulates what you'd expect in any market, right? Like you can't have the up without the down. And yeah, it is breathtaking, I guess, to see this rally we have had. If you have caught it through the back end of 2023, none of us really. I don't think anyone ever really sees it coming, but you kind of try to play cautiously. Yeah,
that speed and how straight up it went for that period. We knew a big move was coming because of the 7 months of consolidation at higher prices, where it just ranged between 25 grand and $30-ish thousand USD, of course. And it didn't go lower, so we knew there was a big move coming. But to the speed of it, I thought we'd have some sort of slight pullback in January. But yeah, just took straight off to peak in March.
I know, I was in this camp. I thought the ETF would be at least somewhat of a more sell the news type of event. Did you kind of sort of expect that as well?
I expected it to be a little bit more than it was, but it still got down to the price target I was looking at, which is roughly around mid to high 30s. I talked about daily on my channel, but I thought it would at least cool off for a bit longer. But maybe now is the time that we do that, because we've been underneath the old all-time high for about 21 days now.
I think another good topic, I guess, speaking about all of this, has been just the general cyclic nature of crypto and how things might be a little bit different. Like we're talking about the market accelerating a lot earlier than expected. What's your sort of take on, I guess, just that, maybe even holistically looking at the broader market cycles that we're seeing? You mentioned real estate and stocks, et cetera. Where do you sort of think we sit now, and what we should be paying attention to?
There's always many options, which is what people hate hearing, but that's trading. No one knows the exact outcome. So what we try to do is judge the strength and the weakness of the market and give ourselves objective points in the market to understand that. So Bitcoin is able to hang out at the prices where it's at now, and we're moving into the next, or the final stage of the real estate cycle, which essentially shows every single time over the last 200 years for the real estate cycle, you get this big blow-off move that takes a couple of years into this peak. Bitcoin being at the point where it is now, essentially at new all-time highs, earlier than it was previously, this could lead into a bigger blow-off move than people are expecting. And the old 3 years up, 1 year down might not last forever. Like this, not saying it's a super cycle, but we might get a multi-year bear market after this move because of how big this move could be. So that kind of leans to the fact that I'm thinking maybe people aren't bullish enough. Still be cautious because we've run up pretty hard and there's maybe 12 or 6 to 18 months to go, say, just to cover all bases here. But yeah, if we do get a big blow-off move, I wouldn't be expecting that we come down for 1 year and then take off again to mega heights. So we'll be able to know over the next sort of 6 months.
Yeah, good shout. Do you think this is the same case for all crypto assets, or do you think Bitcoin might be a little bit more isolated or insulated just because it has that sort of bedrock of traditional finance investing in it now, and it's got its whole sort of limited supply and scarcity narrative running through, like the same way we see gold, right? In a bear market, it kind of just goes sideways. Do you sort of foresee any of that being a possibility?
I mean, anything's possible, as they say. Do I see that happening? I think, again, it's going to come down to what happens to this big peak. Is it able to run up pretty hard and then hold its ground? Like, I think that really comes down to what we would see over the coming years. If it shoots up, puts in a top, and then corrects quite heavily under some key levels, then probably not going to keep seeing it grind out sideways and then go higher. So I think it's still a little bit early to say. Unfortunately, I'd love to have the answer to that myself, but yeah, I think anyone that's saying that it definitely will happen, I would be very skeptical of that, because there's nothing to say that it will do that. And yeah, I'd just be very skeptical of people giving you promises.
No, good shout. Always good advice. Another good way to potentially look at crypto markets is, they have been cyclic for some time quite now. Have you sort of been conducting a bit of analysis on that and talking to your community on how that's sort of shaping out? What can you sort of say about that?
Yeah, we've definitely been looking at that, because when we get to this stage of the cycle, it's coming to the end, but it's not the end. And there might be sort of that 6 to 12 months, as I said before. And you typically see some pretty significant gains in that period. And of course, if you want to get a little bit more risky, or a lot more risky, you go down to the lower caps with the cryptocurrencies and altcoins. And I think if this is going to be that more substantial pullback that we've been waiting for, kind of into like a wave 4 in your Elliott wave counts on a macro scale here for Bitcoin, then you're potentially going to see good buying opportunities on altcoins because of that pullback. So that could be another good entry opportunity, as opposed to waiting for when they're pumping and they're at high prices and everyone at work's talking about them, and the same old sayings, your family's talking to you about it and the neighbors are talking about it. So I think if we do see that bit of a cool off and the pullback, then that might be a good entry opportunity, provided you get into some strong altcoins. And I talk a lot about that on my channel, following different charts of how to do that, comparing the altcoin against their Bitcoin value.
Yeah. And just to, I guess, talk specifics and rattle off maybe some indicators you're looking at right now to sort of maybe call when the altcoins could start to be a more favorable trade. What can you sort of speak to about that? Looking at
Different altcoins, stuff that might be stronger than other altcoins, or confirming the uptrend, we often look at support and resistance, but in a more let's say, technical way that has a little bit more objectivity around it, we would use our Gann swing indicator. And so with that indicator, you're able to assess strength on the short term and the longer term, and not just sort of guess where these levels are. So that's always a key indicator that I use to identify whether that trend is ready to go up, as opposed to just trying to catch a falling knife. A lot of people sort of think, yeah, the crypto's going down, that means it's going to go up. It's 800% from its previous old all-time high. It doesn't really mean anything. I mean, take XRP as an example, as I love to do, and just crap all over that, which, usually offends some people, but, I'm not in it. I don't care, offending. It's money at the end of the day. And I prefer to put my money where something is strong as opposed to where something is weak. And I just look at the chart for that. So it doesn't matter what the name is on it. It's just if the chart looks weak, then I'll stay away from it. And if the chart looks stronger, I'll go with that.
Yeah, well said. And I think the point you're trying to make is, while something might be 800% from an all-time high, there's nothing stopping it falling another 40, 50% before it then proceeds to move to that target. And a lot of people, I know in my circles, when they do have a bit of emotion in the game, it's when they've got too much in the game. So, if it's keeping you up at night and you're thinking about the position, you're probably way too exposed in a very, very on-risk market. So, yeah, it's a very good shout.
Yeah. And not only that, if if it's 800% from the high, it could still fall 40 or 50%. But it's not even worse, but let's say it's even worse if you're in this stage of cryptocurrency and an altcoin season. If you're picking up the weaker stuff, then you're missing out on the bigger gains from some other crypto that doesn't have all this overhead resistance. So although this crypto might be up a lot more and you're like, oh, well, it's way from its bottom, I've missed out, it's in a strong position for a reason. And so it kind of does the fundamental analysis for you, where it's showing you on the chart that it's in a stronger position. Yes, it's up from its low, but that's because there is strength there. That's because there's real reason for it to be higher than its low, as opposed to something that's much lower. So yeah, I think it's important. That's a big one that I see most people miss. New traders or investors and old traders or investors, they still miss that. They still don't understand that just because something's high doesn't mean that it's overvalued. It means that there's strength there for a reason.
Yeah, very well said. I hear that all the time. Axie Infinity was a great one last cycle. A lot of us in the office were even saying, oh, it's gone too high, it's gone too big. And it was at $13 at the time because it moved from $5. But I mean, that thing just went absolutely crazy, right? Obviously a shadow of its former self, but it's a good example of, like you're sort of saying, sometimes in the right market conditions, yes, something might be up quite a bit, but it's up for a good reason. And I think that sort of is a good way to maybe talk about, from your perspective, what's maybe one or two tips you can give to people when building a watch list. What's some helpful tricks on that?
One big helpful trick that I talk a lot about on my channel and with our community is to look at the altcoin, obviously against its USD pairing, or if you're on SwiftX, then obviously you're looking against AUD pairing. But I also look at it against its Bitcoin pairing, because that quickly tells me if something is strong or if it's weak. And what does that mean? It just means, is this crypto, does it have potential to outperform Bitcoin this cycle? So if it's breaking underneath key support levels against the Bitcoin value, and there's ways to do this, which you'd have to go onto YouTube to find. But if it is breaking under those, then it's unlikely, not guaranteed, but unlikely that it's going to outperform Bitcoin. So what's the point of holding it? If it's high risk, you're better off being in Bitcoin, because it's lower risk and is likely going to outperform this crappy altcoin. But if that altcoin is doing well against its Bitcoin value, then it's probably going to outperform Bitcoin, and that's the sort of thing that you want to be invested in.
Yeah, I really like that too, especially for people that maybe have been holding onto portfolios for the last 1 to 2 cycles. Now's a good probably opportunity to do a bit of a health check on how your altcoins are performing versus Bitcoin.
Exactly.
Because if they're never going to recover, there's a good chance the USD value will never recover as well. Mate, I think this has been good. I think there's a fair bit of alpha being shared. There's some good takeaways. Obviously, some pretty important months ahead of us. We've got the macroeconomic picture looking a lot better and brighter, but for how long, I guess, is the key takeaway there. And yeah, looking forward myself personally to altcoins having a bit of time in the sun once this halvening's done and dusted. But mate, I want to thank you for coming on today, and like always, we'll wait for the next one and see how things are sizing up.
Excellent. Thanks again.